Normally, we do real people making real mistakes. Today, we're taking a detour. We're going into Greek mythology to hunt for idiots. Because 3,000 years ago, humans were already making decisions so stupid the gods had to invent brand new punishments just to keep up. 10 cases. Stay for number 10, where a man loses an entire empire because he looked up at the sky. Number 1. Phaethon was a teenager with one problem. The other kid said his father wasn't really the son. Now, a normal person handles this by ignoring it. Phaethon decided he needed proof, in writing, notarized. So he marched into the palace of Helios, the actual sun god, and demanded to be acknowledged. And Helios, being a father running on pure guilt, made the single worst promise in the history of parenting. He swore on the river Styx to give the boy anything he asked for. That oath is unbreakable, not strongly discouraged, not you'll feel bad about it. Unbreakable, even for a god. He signed a blank contract and handed the pen to a 15-year-old. The kid asked for the chariot. One day, driving the sun, Helios begged him to pick literally anything else. He explained the route, the altitude, the fact that the horses breathe fire, and the sky comes with no guardrails, no shoulder, and nowhere to pull over. Picture handing someone the keys to a nuclear reactor on wheels and then trying to talk them out of it using a laminated safety pamphlet. Phaethon wasn't listening. He'd already won the argument in his head on the walk over. Here's the part people skip. The horses knew immediately. 4 animals who have felt the exact same weight on the exact same reins every single morning for eternity. And suddenly the load is light and the hands are shaking. They did what any animal does the second it realizes nobody is actually in charge. They left. Down first. The chariot dipped low enough to set the world on fire. Rivers boiled dry, forests went up like dropped matches, and this is the moment the story says North Africa became desert. An entire continent's worth of green cooked off in one afternoon by a kid who could not parallel park. Then the horses panicked upward and half the planet froze solid. He was swinging a 5,500-degree object back and forth over the earth like a toddler running through a crowded room with a lit sparkler. Zeus watched this for about as long as you'd expect, and then reached for the only tool that solves it. Lightning. Phaethon came out of the sky like a burning coin and went straight into the river. And his sisters stood on the bank and cried until they turned into poplar trees, and their tears hardened into amber, which is a gorgeous image, and also, that's basically what amber is. Tree resin that wept out of a wound, sat there for 40 million years, and went solid with a bug stuck in it. The Greeks held up a golden stone with a mosquito frozen inside, thought, yeah, that's grief, and built a whole myth on it. Wrong about the mechanism, weirdly correct about the mood. So, 1 insecure teenager, 1 promise nobody could cancel, 1 desert. That's the price of asking dad for the car. Number 2. 10 years. 10 years the Greeks sat outside Troy, and those walls did not care. Then one morning the Trojans wake up, look at the beach, and it's empty. No ships, no camp, nothing. Just a giant wooden horse standing there like the world's most aggressive lawn ornament. Now. Troy had 2 people who called it. 2. The first was Laocoon, a priest, who threw a spear into the horse's side and delivered a line so good we're still quoting it 3,000 years later. I fear the Greeks, even when they're bringing gifts. The second was Cassandra, the king's own daughter, who told them exactly what was inside, in detail, out loud, in public. Both correct. Both ignored. And the reason why is the part that should genuinely disturb you. Because a Greek named Sinon was standing right there, tied up, crying, with a beautiful story about how his own army had betrayed him and left him to die. And people will believe almost anything from someone who appears to be a victim of the same guys they hate. He told them the horse was sacred, that harming it would doom the city, but bringing it inside would make Troy unbeatable. And then 2 sea serpents came out of the water and strangled Laocoon and both his sons in front of everyone. Watch what the crowd does with that. The man who warned them just got publicly destroyed. And instead of reading that as a threat, they read it as a peer review. Guy was wrong about the horse. Look what happened to him. The mob took the strongest possible evidence and ran it backwards through the machine. So they brought it in. And here's the detail that never makes it into the kids' version. The horse didn't fit. The gates were too small. So the Trojans, The people whose entire survival for a decade had been 100% about that wall. Got out tools and knocked a hole in their own fortification to make room for the gift. They breached themselves. The Greeks didn't have to. Historians, by the way, have spent centuries trying to make this literal, and the theories are almost funnier. Maybe it was a siege engine, a battering ram wrapped in wet horsehides so it wouldn't burn. War machines back then genuinely got animal names. Maybe it was a ship with a horse's head carved on the prow. And maybe it was an earthquake, because Poseidon is the god of the sea, and horses, and earthquakes, and there's real damage at Troy that looks exactly like the ground moved. But the myth is better, because the myth is honest about the actual cause. Troy didn't fall to a horse. Troy fell to a room full of people who really, really wanted the war to be over, and found a story that agreed with them. 10 years of discipline. One night of vibes. Number 3. Somebody rolls a golden apple into a wedding party with 2 words on it, for the fairest. That's it. That's the whole device. No name, no instructions, just bait. And 3 goddesses immediately claim it, because of course they do. Zeus, who is a god of thunder and also a coward, refuses to judge it. So he outsources the most dangerous decision in the universe to a shepherd on a hillside named Paris. Here are the offers on the table. Hera, power. Rule over Asia. An empire handed to you today. Athena, victory in every battle you ever fight, plus wisdom. Meaning you win, and you also know why you win, and you keep winning after she stops paying attention. Aphrodite, the most beautiful woman in the world. Small footnote on that 3rd one. She's married to the king of Sparta. Aphrodite did not mention this because Aphrodite is not in sales for the honesty. And Paris, a man being offered a permanent empire, a permanent win condition, and a date. Picks the date. I want to be fair to him for 1 second. Because I've watched people turn down a serious opportunity for a much worse thing that felt more exciting at the time. And I say that as a guy who has made video decisions I stand by emotionally and cannot defend financially. So I get it. I just usually don't take out a civilization. Because here's the mechanism. And it's the reason this is number 3 and not number 9. Helen wasn't just some woman. Years earlier, when every powerful man in Greece showed up to marry her stepfather saw the obvious problem. 1 winner, 40 armed losers, and made all of them swear an oath first. Every suitor swore that if anyone ever took her, they would all come and get her back. That's not a wedding tradition. That's a mutual defense treaty. Every king in Greece was contractually locked into 1 woman's marriage. Paris didn't kidnap a person. He triggered an alliance clause. 1,000 ships. 10 years. Achilles dead. Hector dragged behind a chariot, Patroclus dead, Ajax on his own sword, an entire city erased, and Paris himself killed before it was even over. He didn't get to enjoy the prize he burned the world for. And the survivors who ran west from the ashes? The Romans would later claim those refugees as their founders. So the Roman Empire, in its own official origin story, starts because a shepherd looked at 3 options and chose the one with the worst return. The gods offered him a kingdom and invincibility. He took the girl who came with a war attached. Number 4. King Oenomaus had a daughter, Hippodamia, and a prophecy that his son-in-law would kill him. So he set up a system. Any man who wanted to marry her had to beat him in a chariot race. Lose, and you die. 13 men tried, and Oenomaus kept the heads, nailed up outside the palace in a row as a customer review section for suitor number 14. Enter Pelops. Pelops looks at 13 heads and does the math correctly for once. I cannot win this race, honestly. So he goes to the king's charioteer, Myrtilus, and buys him. Simple deal. Sabotage the royal chariot, and you get paid. Myrtilus pulls the linchpin. And if you've never thought about it, a linchpin is the small pin that stops a wheel from sliding off the axle. And in some versions, he swapped the bronze one for wax. Which is beautiful, because a wheel bearing under load gets hot. Not warm, hot. So the sabotage doesn't fail at the start line where anyone could spot it. It holds for exactly as long as it takes the axle to heat up, and then the wheel walks off at full speed with a king attached. Oenomaus died in the crash. Pelops won the girl, the kingdom, everything. And then Myrtilus showed up to collect. Now, This is the easiest problem in this entire video. A man did the job. You owe him money. That's it. That's the whole task. And Pelops, brand new king, holding a kingdom with functionally unlimited resources, decided the better play was to walk this guy to a cliff and push him off. Congratulations. You just turned a payroll line item into a witness, and then into a curse. Because Myrtilus had the entire fall to talk, and he used it. He cursed Pelops and every descendant Pelops would ever have. Here's what that invoice actually cost. Pelops' sons were Atreus and Thyestes, and their whole thing was tricking each other into eating their own children. Atreus' sons were Agamemnon and Menelaus. Menelaus is the husband from case 3, the one whose wife gets taken. Agamemnon is the man who sacrifices his own daughter for a favorable wind, burns Troy, comes home, and gets killed in his bathtub by his wife, which then forces his son Orestes to kill his own mother, which spawns 3 of the most famous plays ever written. Every single one of those bodies traces back to a man who didn't want to settle up with a contractor. And the punchline. Pelops is remembered as a hero. There's a shrine to him at Olympia. They sacrificed a black ram to him every year. He supposedly founded the Olympic Games as an apology for the guy he killed in the chariot race. Not, you'll notice, for the guy he threw off the cliff. And the entire southern half of Greece is named after him. The Peloponnese. Pelops Island. Cheapest possible lesson, ignored at maximum possible cost. Pay your people. Number 5. Prometheus stole fire for humans and got a lifetime subscription to having his liver eaten. Before they took him away, he left his brother one instruction. 1. Do not accept anything from Zeus. No gifts. No deliveries. Nothing. His brother was named Epimetheus, and the names here are not subtle. Prometheus means forethought, thinks first. Epimetheus means afterthought, the guy who figures it out on the drive home. So Zeus sends a gift, and Epimetheus, running his one personality trait at full power, takes it. The gift was Pandora, and she came with a container, and the container came with a rule: never open this. Quick correction, because this one's been wrong for 500 years. It was not a box. Hesiod wrote pithos, which is a giant clay storage jar, the kind you sink into the floor of your house to hold a year's grain. We call it a box because in 1508, Erasmus was translating the story into Latin, reached for the word pyxis, which means a small box, and just missed. And the typo won. 3,000 years of oral tradition, undone by one guy having an off day at his desk, which is honestly the most relatable thing in Greek mythology and something I think about every time I record a take wrong. So it's not a jewelry box on a shelf. It's a floor-mounted silo. She had to physically haul the lid off. This was not a flick of curiosity. This was a project. And out came everything. Sickness, old age, hard labor, grief, madness. Every category of human suffering released in one go, scattering out into a world that up to that point had never had any of it. The stories are very clear on this. Before the lid came off, people did not get sick and did not grow old. She slammed it shut. Too late for everything except one thing still sitting at the bottom: hope. And nobody has ever agreed on what that means. If hope stayed trapped in the jar, do we have it or did we lose it too? Is it the one comfort we kept, or is it the last cruelty? The thing that keeps you going back to a situation that has already been decided. The Greek word is elpis, and it doesn't cleanly mean hope. It means expectation, which can mean it'll be fine. It can also mean you have no idea what's coming. Genuinely one of the darkest endings ever written, and it's usually taught to 8-year-olds with a picture of a smiling lady and a treasure chest. One man ignored one sentence from his brother, and the entire operating conditions of human life changed permanently. Every disease you've ever had, every funeral you've been to, because a guy named Thinks Later accepted a package. Number 6. Theseus goes to Crete to kill the Minotaur. Before he leaves, his father Aegeus sets up a signal, because Athens is a long way from Crete, and there's no other way to get news. Black sails on the way out. If you survive, swap them for white on the way back. If I see black, I'll know you're dead. That's the system. One flag. Binary. A single bit of information. And it's a genuinely smart system because of how the sea works. When a ship comes towards you over open water, you don't see the hull first. The curve of the planet hides it. The top of the mast clears the horizon before anything else does. So the sail is the first piece of that ship that exists to a man standing on a cliff. Aegeus wasn't being dramatic. He picked the only part of the ship you can read from that far away. Theseus does it. Kills the Minotaur, gets out of the labyrinth using Ariadne's thread, escapes Crete, and, small side note on his character, abandons Ariadne on an island on the way home after she saved his entire life. Great guy. Anyway, he sails home. He does not change the sail. Plutarch's explanation is the one that hurts. It wasn't grief. It wasn't a storm. It was joy. Theseus and the helmsman were so happy, so completely lit up by having survived, that the task just fell out of both their heads. And that's the version I believe, because that's exactly how that kind of memory fails. Not remembering a fact, remembering to do a thing later, at a specific future moment, with no reminder in front of you. That's the flimsiest thing your brain does. It's why we have alarms, sticky notes, and checklists. It's why pilots read a laminated card out loud instead of trusting themselves. Your memory for future tasks is a wet napkin, and Theseus loaded a man's life onto it and then had the best day of his life on top of it. Aegeus had been on that cliff for weeks, every day, watching. And on the day his son actually came home alive, he saw black. He didn't wait for the ship to dock. He didn't check. He went off the rock. So Theseus lands in Athens as a returning hero. The crowd is screaming. He's just killed a monster. And someone has to walk up and tell him. He became king of Athens that same day. First act as ruler, bury his father. And here's the part that makes it permanent. The sea Aegeus fell into got named after him, the Aegean. It's on every map on Earth. Millions of people fly over it every summer. And it is named after a man who died because two guys were in a good mood and forgot one item on a checklist. That is the largest monument ever built to an admin error. Number 7. Midas finds Dionysus' old teacher, Silenus passed out drunk in his rose garden, sobers him up, and returns him. Dionysus, delighted, offers him any wish. Any wish. Unlimited scope. And Midas says, "Everything I touch turns to gold." Even Dionysus paused on that one. There's a version where the god visibly winces, like a bartender watching you order the 4th shot. The first 10 minutes were incredible. Twig, gold. Stone, gold. Door, gold. Midas is running around his palace like a kid who found the cheat codes. Then dinner. And this is where it stops being a fairy tale, because gold does not do anything. That's its whole personality. It doesn't rust, doesn't react, doesn't break down. It's the most chemically standoffish metal we have, and that is exactly why we've used it for money for 3,000 years. Nothing sticks to it, nothing changes it. It just sits there being gold forever, which is a fantastic property in a vault and a fatal one in a stomach. Bread goes to metal on his tongue. Wine goes solid in his throat. Water. Everything. He has infinite wealth and roughly a week to live. And then, in the version that really lands, his daughter runs in to comfort him. Gold is 19 times heavier than water, which means a person's worth of it comes out somewhere north of a ton. So what he's now standing in front of isn't a statue. It's a 1.5 tone object with his daughter's face on it that he cannot move, cannot bury, and cannot stop looking at. He goes back to Dionysus and begs, "Take it back." The god tells him to go wash in the river Pactolus. And here's the part that turns this from a fable into a receipt. The gold came off him and went into the river. And the Pactolus really was a gold river. It ran with electrum, a natural gold-silver alloy, roughly 55% gold, that you could just pan out of the sand. That river made the kingdom of Lydia obscenely rich. And around 600 BC, the Lydians took those little lumps of river metal, stamped a lion's head on them, and invented coins. Money. Actual money. First time anybody had done it. So the myth of a man destroyed by wanting everything to be gold is the origin story of the thing that lets you turn everything into gold. And you'll see the Lydians again, at the very end of this list, in the worst possible way. Oh, and Midas learned nothing. He later judged a music contest between Apollo and a goat-legged flute guy, voted against Apollo, and got donkey ears for it. 2 wishes, 2 disasters. Some people are just not built for infinite power. Number 8. Odysseus lands on the island of Aeolus, keeper of the winds, and Aeolus decides to just solve the man's entire problem. He takes every storm wind, every crosswind, every gust that could push a ship off course, stuffs them into an oxide bag, ties it with a silver cord, and hands it over. Then he leaves exactly one wind free, the west wind, blowing straight at Ithaca. That's not a gift. That's a cheat code. The sea has been switched off. All you have to do is not open the bag. Odysseus steers, personally. For 9 days and 9 nights, he does not hand off the tiller and does not sleep because he does not trust anyone else with it. Which, hold that thought, because it's the actual cause of what happens next. Day 10. Ithaca is visible. Not on the horizon, visible. He can see the hills. He can see men on the shore tending beacon fires. After 20 years of war and monsters, he is close enough to recognize individual people on his own beach. And that's when his body files for bankruptcy. Because you cannot white-knuckle 9 days. That's not a discipline problem. That's a hardware limit. Push past a couple of days and your brain starts shutting itself down in pieces without consulting you. A few seconds at a time, eyes open, hands still on the rope, nobody home. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't negotiate. It just goes. Odysseus didn't decide to sleep. Sleep collected. And his crew, who have watched their captain guard one mysterious bag for 9 straight days and refuse all help, have arrived at the only conclusion available to them. It's treasure. Aeolus gave him gold, and he's not splitting it. 10 years of war, and this guy's holding out on us. They untie it. Every wind on earth comes out at once, in one place, on one small boat, in sight of home. The storm picks up the entire fleet and throws it all the way back to where it started. They sail into Aeolus harbor again, and Aeolus comes out, looks at them, and refuses. Says, "Get off my island. I'm not helping a man the gods clearly hate." So they're back at 0 minus a god's protection, and everything after this is downhill. Cannibal giants smashing 11 of 12 ships, a year with a witch, a trip to the land of the dead, Scylla, Charybdis, 7 years stranded with Calypso, 10 more years. Every single crew member dead. They could see the smoke from their own houses. And in that exact moment, they decided to check what was in the bag. I'd love to say I'd have done better. I've refreshed my analytics at 3 in the morning to see how a video was doing. Same energy, different bag. Number 9. Erysichthon, king in Thessaly, wanted a banquet hall. Big one, nice one. For that he needed timber, and the best timber around happened to be a grove that belonged to Demeter, goddess of grain, harvest, and the entire concept of food. He goes anyway, and his own workers stop at the biggest oak, because that tree is covered in wreaths and ribbons, one for every prayer Demeter had actually answered. That tree is a physical record of a goddess helping people. His men look at it and put the axes down, so the king takes the axe himself, and when he cuts, the tree bleeds. Because there was a nymph living inside it, and he kills her, and she gets a dying sentence out, "You will be punished for this." Demeter's response is the most creative sentence in Greek mythology. She doesn't kill him. She doesn't curse his family. She summons Limos, the spirit of famine, hunger itself, and has her installed in the king's stomach. From that moment, eating makes him hungrier. And I want to sit on how nasty that actually is, because your appetite isn't willpower. It's chemistry. Your stomach lining makes a hormone that tells your brain, "Start eating." It climbs before meals and drops after. Meanwhile, your fat cells send the opposite signal. Enough. We're stocked, stand down. 2 messages, 1 switchboard in your head, and the balance between them is the entire reason you ever put a fork down. Break that switchboard, and the person doesn't become greedy. They become trapped. There are real conditions where the full message never arrives. The meal happens, the stomach is physically full, and the brain is still screaming that the body is starving. People with it have to have kitchens locked. Not because they lack discipline, because the receipt never gets delivered. That's what Demeter did. She didn't punish him with hunger. She deleted the confirmation email. So he eats. He eats through the palace stores. He sells the furniture, the land, the livestock, the kingdom, and eats the money. And when there is genuinely nothing left, he sells his own daughter Mestra into slavery. Mestra, luckily, could shapeshift. Unluckily, her father worked out that this meant she could escape and be sold again. So he sold her, over and over. He turned his child into a renewable revenue stream to buy lunch. And when even that stopped covering it, Erysichthon sat down and started eating himself. He wanted a room to hold feasts in. He got a feast that never ends. Number 10. Athens, 413 BC. The Athenians had sailed to Sicily to take Syracuse, and it had gone catastrophically wrong. 2 years in, their enormous fleet is bottled up in the Great Harbor. The army is sick, and the commander, Nicias, has finally accepted the obvious. They're leaving. Ships loaded, men aboard, ready to sail that night. They had the exit. It was open. All they had to do was go. And then, on the night of the 27th of August, the moon went out. A total lunar eclipse. The moon slides into the Earth's shadow, and it doesn't just go dark. It goes red. Deep, dirty copper. And the reason is honestly the most beautiful fact in this entire video. The only light still reaching the moon has bent through the edge of our atmosphere first. You're watching every sunrise and every sunset happening on Earth at that moment, all of them at once, projected onto a rock 250,000 miles away. It's also on a schedule. Eclipses run in cycles. Within about a century, Greeks would be calculating these. It's a calendar event. Nicias was extremely devout and extremely not a scientist. He asked his fortune tellers what to do. They told him to wait 3 times 9 days, 27 days. He accepted that. And the Syracusans, watching an entire enemy fleet just sit there for no visible reason, worked out immediately what it meant. They're running, and now they've stopped. So Syracuse blocked the harbor mouth, chained ships across it, sealed the exit. The Athenians, who could have sailed out clean, now had to fight their way through a wall. The breakout failed. The fleet was destroyed. What was left of the army abandoned the ships and ran inland on foot, 40,000 men with no food, and got hunted the whole way. It ended at the river Aegius, where a dying army broke ranks to drink from water that was already full of blood and bodies, and the Syracusans killed them while they drank. The survivors were dumped in stone quarries. No shelter, corpses left where they fell, and worked until most of them were dead. Nicias was executed. Around 200 ships, tens of thousands of men, the Athenian navy, the thing the entire empire ran on, deleted in a matter of days. Thucydides, who was alive for it and not the emotional type, called it the greatest disaster in Greek history. 9 years later, Athens surrendered. The walls came down. The empire was over. The eclipse lasted about 3 hours. The delay it caused lasted about 3,000. And this is what the whole list has been building to. Phaethon wanted respect. Paris wanted a girl. The crew wanted their cut. Nicias just wanted to be careful. Not one of these people set out to break the world. They all just had one bad moment on the one day it counted. And that's the lineup. 3,000 years of documentation proving that people have always been exactly this stupid. We just used to blame it on gods instead of admitting it. If your brain enjoyed that, there's another video right here full of people doing it in real life with real cameras rolling. Go, click it, and maybe pay your contractor.